Well, first of all, fame happened to me nice and slow. It was like a slow drip. I was on a sitcom with 7 other people. I would never got recognized anywhere. Very rarely did people know who I was. And then I was on Fear Factor, and that was a lot more like popular and a lot more notoriety. But it was okay. It was doable. And then the podcast happened, and the UFC and the podcast kind of happened around the same time. It's like the UFC happened first. I was working for the UFC. I actually started working for the UFC back in 97. And I did that back when it was like banned from cable, and, you could only get it if you had a satellite dish. And to me, it was just, I was a lifelong martial artist, and I was excited about the concept of getting all these different styles together. And so I got recognized a little bit from the UFC. And then after my podcast took off a few years after the UFC took off. And it was just like all these things kind of compounded. And then somewhere around I guess it was like 2013, 2014, it started getting really weird. That's when it started getting crazy. And by then I had already kind of had an understanding of who I was, and a lot of it is also martial arts because, when you're doing martial arts all the time, you're always getting your ass kicked. So you're always humbled.
Sure.
And then if it wasn't for martial arts, the other stuff that I do, the workouts, they're so fucking brutal. You break yourself. And if you break all the time, you don't ever get this chance to have a distorted perception of yourself because you have limitations. That you're always constantly trying to get better. And if you're spending any time thinking about what an amazing fucking human you are, what a killer you are, you're such a badass, that time you're robbing yourself of that energy that you could be using to improve yourself. And so I look at any kind of mental weakness like that, where you have a distorted perception of reality or where you're full of yourself, that's poison. That stuff's poison, and it gets in the way of progress. And so I've never gravitated towards it. I'm not interested in it. It doesn't, I don't know, just for what I'm doing of my life, it just doesn't, it has no place. So luckily, I have that mindset, and I've always kind of had that mindset. So I've managed to avoid most of that shit.